Thanks everyone. Just before we start, I want to just take a picture, but this is for my own self. This is not a going to the public. So thank you very much for joining us at Tech Leadership. We haven't had any of these in real life events. We've been alternating between Zoom and here, so we really appreciate everyone coming out. And we're really happy that Zapier gave us the beautiful offices to have the event tonight. Firstly, some words from our sponsors. Each Pay, thanks a lot for all your support as usual. There are a couple of Each Pay folks around. Most of them are wearing hoodies, so you'll see who there are. The second bunch of folks that we want to thank is Office Zen for sponsoring t-shirts and swag. I think they've become ubiquitous with the tech landscape here in South Africa. And you can see a developer a mile away because of the cool flag. Then just on to Tech Leadership, we do have a newsletter that comes out every month. It's just a good collection of tech leadership topics, anything that we find is interesting to curate. So if you folks want to, this QR code will take you there, or we are on headreview.co and Tech Leadership. Please do follow us on Leadership X on Twitter. We tweet about some interesting tech leadership things, topics, hopefully will interest you. So, Office and Swag is around. I think there's a table out in the back. If you haven't picked up a t-shirt yet, please go ahead and do so. They are very cool. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Ebrahim. I've known Muneer for a very long time. Way back in the day, he was a system analyst at a company that we just overlapped. And he's gone on to do bigger and better things. At one stage, he was the CIO of a big award-winning bank here in South Africa. And he's currently a director at Microsoft. But he's still not so far removed from me. I had a tech problem a little bit earlier, and Muneer actually helped me restart it and get it working. Big hand to Muneer, and he'll be talking about hitting your career goals, strategies for success. Thank you, Muneer. Thanks, Benny, and thanks everyone for the round of applause. Welcome to Tech Leadership. The energy I felt walking in was quite palpable and very exciting. And I think this is somebody just mentioned it over here. First post-COVID event. So should be fine. Just plug in. Here we go. Cool, yeah, there we go. Okay, so welcome. Thank you everyone for coming out. I'm going to try and pace it around a little bit while I'm playing off my head on the lights. I need to watch out a little bit. If it is too distracting, just raise your hand or wave or something. I'll just stand on that side of the machine. It's a little warm there. But yeah, thanks for coming out. Very nice to see everybody. I have been in Cape Town, or back in Cape Town for a long time. So to see and connect with some of the tech community back in Cape Town is quite awesome. So thank you for your time and thank you for coming to hang out. As Benny said, he forgets actually, when they first, and when I say they, because he's got a brother, for those who don't know, when they first moved to Cape Town, it's actually when I met him. So we're going back somewhere like around, I think 2003, maybe there. Yeah, that's how long I've known Benny and his brother. And I'll never forget, I used to be on Facebook many years ago. Benny's profile picture on Facebook was him in a Coke fridge. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but it's quite funny. I can't actually remember it's your brother, but one of you was stuck in a Coke fridge, which is a memory that I'll always keep of Benny. I mean, we kind of overlapped from a career perspective a couple times, and then socially, I think we knew quite a few people. And then when I came back to Cape Town, we used to train at the same gym. Bumped into Benny and they kind of sparked a conversation around, hey, what are you up to? What are you doing these days? and then we kind of lost touch a little bit for about a year or so, and then reconnected again. And then Benny has given me this opportunity to come and chat to a few bright folks about some things around careers. So, thanks, Benny. And thank you to all of you. So I'll start off with Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors. He authored a book called Start With Why, and then a whole host of others. And they're all about kind of leadership and you as a leader, how you need to be able to evolve. And he's got a really good video on exactly this called the Golden Circle on YouTube. Some of you probably have watched it a million times. I know I certainly have. And he always begins with this thing, start with why. And that's why I wanted to start with this slide. So, like, why am I here? What's important about me being here? To be fair, it's probably nothing important at all. But I am very passionate about people development, and I consider myself to be a people leader. And so, what better way to share with the technology community some of the things that you can do as an individual, whether you're a mid or senior manager trying to hit an executive post, or you are an IC, an individual contributor, trying to move into more of a management role. And so that's kind of the things that I'm going to base the conversation around. And I call it a conversation because at any stage, please feel free, stick up your hand, shout, ask a question. I prefer to have interactive discussions as opposed to me running through slides. I prepared 56 slides. I'm lying. And he said, I've got 7, we're already through 2 on to the second. I've got 7 slides in total. So I try and talk to pictures more than I try and talk to words, so that it keeps you somewhat engaged. But feel free to shout at any stage, really, the floor is open at any point. And so that's my why. I really am passionate about seeing people progress. It comes back from, I started my career in Cape Town in the early 2000s, and funny enough, actually, I started out, there used to be a bank in the building next door. That bank was called 2020, for those who are old enough to know, to remember. I used to work for that bank, and that's where I started my professional career. And so it's quite cool and quite fun actually to be able to come full circle and share some leadership insights and some people building strategies and technologies, or not necessarily technologies, people strategies, in a place where I started my career. And so I started out in the early 2000s, and I was very ambitious about the things that I wanted to do and wanted to achieve in my career. And so I was constantly met with things like, you can't do this, or that's not possible for you. And that really frustrated me as a junior. And I think that a lot of people are faced with that. And so I had a goal in mind when I started my career, as I started to progress through my career, to say that I don't want anyone else to be in that position. I want to be able to open doors for people in whichever way, shape or form I can do that. And if that is from career counseling to tips to delivering a conversation like this, then I absolutely want to be able to do that, because I think that there's so much that you've got access to that we don't necessarily know. And I have been fortunate or unfortunate to grow up in a corporate environment, and I talk about strict corporate, not necessarily a startup or a mid-sized environment. And the lessons that you face in corporate are quite hard. The challenges that you face are quite hard. And so I wanted to come and share some of the things I do, and hopefully it is of use to you. And again, like, I'm sure that there's something that we could resonate with. So again, feel free to shout, ask questions, and let's chat. So that's a bit about my why. I'm not necessarily going to go into the how and the what. This is a whole topic on its own, which I would very happily spend hours talking about. But Simon Sinek is probably a lot better at it than I am, so I urge you to go and check out his YouTube video. I urge you to go and check out his YouTube video online. He talks about Apple in this thing, and I think it's really great. If you're on a leadership journey, go check out. Okay, so who am I? Okay. Okay, so who am I? I specifically chose these pictures for a number of reasons. I generally tend to do this, so when I was a CIO in the bank in Joburg, I did something very similar, and the reason is very simple. When I'm trying to talk to people, I want to connect at a human level. And so rather than put up perceived accolades or career history, in words on a page, you get to see kind of more of my life through these pictures. So front and center is like I'm a really zany, kind of outgoing, easy person. I identify with, if anyone has done an Enneagram personality style map, I map to an Enneagram 8. We can talk about that another time. I think, has Cameron spoken here? Okay. Yeah, so Cameron Fenter, used to be my golf coach actually, has probably spoken at Tech Leadership. He speaks about Enneagrams and as a coach. I'll come to that stuff a little bit later, and you'll understand why I'm talking about it now. But I map to an Enneagram 8. I love waffles. This is Gelato Mania. I'm a massive sports fan and a huge golfer, so that's why I have always been, it's cut out a little bit, I've always been a faithful Cape Town supporter. That's from Milton Golf Course, so two of my favorite things. The mountain obviously is given out by the thing, by the image. I'm big on family, so my two sisters and my wife and I'm also a pretty big part of my life. And then my cat. My cat is Thomas. He literally lazes around like that all day. So this is kind of who I am. My career spans about 20 odd years, just shy of 20 years. I started in banking. I always knew I wanted to be in the banking environment. I went to university in Cape Town. I went to UWC. I studied information systems, economics and finance. And when I graduated from university, it was very clear to me what I wanted to do. And so everything that I've done has been very deliberate from a career path perspective. I spent about 5 years in Cape Town, worked at 2020, I worked at Ellen Gray, I worked for a software development company that's gone bust, Financial Software Futures. And then I moved to KZN, I moved to Joburg, I worked for Accenture, then I went to First Rand and I was at FNB. And then my last job at FNB, I was CIO for the business focus. I subsequently, in October last year, I left the bank after 10 years on my anniversary, and 10-year anniversary, and I work at Microsoft. So I'm a director in financial services. I form part of the global team in South Africa, and at some point I'm probably going to go into the shores of Cape Town. So that's a little bit about me. So let's get into kind of the crux of the conversation, and I'll try and move kind of quite quickly. This is really the only slide. This one and the next one, I think, are the only two slides of real importance or anything that I've kind of prepped for the conversation. These images I actually happened to find this morning. It's pretty cool. It's I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning and I was browsing through Twitter, and I happened to come across these images. And thankfully they're all marked except for these three. So at least the credit can be given to the artist. But I thought that these were really good in trying to share the topic of conversation today. And one of them really stood out for me, and it's a personal thing which I'll come to. I talked about kind of looking back on the mountain. I'll tell you where they come from. And it's never a linear line to success. And so I shared around like success, because success can be termed whatever you might think it might be. Like, I can't tell you that being a DevOps manager is success. It's really whatever you feel you want to be able to achieve in your career can be termed as success. Whether that happens in 5 years or whether it happens in 15 years, like, you will know. There's no single methodology that you can say, oh, if I follow that track, like, that's the thing that I'm going to be able to do and achieve, and if I do X over Y, yes, to a degree there will be those things, but to a large degree it's really about you as an individual. And so I felt that these images would resonate, and I'm not necessarily going to talk to all of them exactly. I'm really going to make it up as I go along with it. But you'll see that the things that I talk to kind of resonate in some of these images. So when you do this for the first time, this, when you try and manage your career, or when you try and progress in some way, if you're not out there with it, or if you are the personality type that is a little bit fearful of making a big leap, it can feel quite overwhelming. So that's kind of where image number one came. So, or top left. It can be really daunting. And it can be that for many reasons, right? It could be people in the workplace, it could be whether you're confident and comfortable to be able to take on certain challenges, or whether you think you're skilled enough or not. And so the thing that I really want to share with you is back yourself, because no one else is going to do it. I can tell you that now. I've experienced it, and today's conversation is really about like the experiences that I've had and the things that I can share with you. It might not be exactly what happens in your world, but it certainly is the things that I've experienced, and so that's what I'm looking to share. So back yourself, because to a large degree, no one else is really going to back you. And so when you are confident in your own abilities, you start this thing as you start getting momentum going. You start to see that this journey that you're trying to plot for yourself from a career perspective becomes a lot more manageable, and it's actually a lot easier than you thought it was. And then before you know it, you're pretty much juggling the day-to-day responsibility that you have, plus researching some things that are of massive interest to you, plus playing sport or having some other hobby on the side, finding time with your partner, and you're able to juggle all of these things and you feel really good about it. And so the thing that I'm trying to share that is probably the most obvious to all of you is just don't be scared to kind of take the leap of faith to be able to do it, because once you start getting into a rhythm or into a motion, you'll find that it's probably a lot easier than you thought. And then you have to be extremely resilient. Yeah, go ahead. Question?
Sorry, just before you move on, I wanted to find out, you spoke about finding your why.
Yeah.
Your personality type, you touched on it now again.
Yeah.
Have you finding your personality type played a huge role in finding your security within your why?
Great question. Really good question. So the answer is absolutely yes. So I had to figure out a lot about myself at a young age because of the background that I had. And so for me, it was really do or die, right? Like I came from a single parent home where if I didn't make a success of my life, like I was dead in the water, right? My mom spent money on my education that could have gone to a whole list of other things. My sister didn't have the opportunity to go to university straight out of school. She had to pay for her own education. And so I had a lot riding on my shoulders to kind of make a success of my life, whatever that might be, right? Again, success is really your own thing. And so it was very important for me to be self-confident and self-aware, which I'm a lot more now than I was back then. But I had to be in order to know what I wanted to achieve out of life or from life, including a career. And so it was absolutely critical for me to know what my strengths and weaknesses were, what my personality type was, what I was really good at, what I wasn't so good at, because it helped me to forge my career ahead. And it also helped me to be very thick-skinned, because in Cape Town, the market is extremely small. And I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and I think to a slightly younger audience might not do it today, but you have to wait for your manager to die before you progress, right? And so it's a joke. And so, you know, like I knew that if I was going to progress, or if I needed to progress, then I had to figure out a lot of things for myself and be self-confident rather than listen to somebody, and I said it at the start, listen to somebody tell me, oh, you can't do that. Because you're telling me you can't do that only motivates me as an individual more than it does some other people. And that's why it was really important for me to know about my personality, about my style, about who I am. I didn't know it as well as and I probably don't know it as well, but I didn't know it as well as I know it now, back then. Because there were things that people told me, like, I'm quite stubborn, I'm quite abrasive, because they felt insecure in themselves, or in themselves, right? And in the environment that we were in. And so I turned that around once I started to understand what my type was, is that actually, like, I'm just really straight down the line. And what you term to be aggressive is actually just me being very clear around the things that I want to be able to do, and I'm going to go out and get that. Whether I'm going to be a success of it or not. I'm going to try, and I'm going to make some kind of effort around. And so, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I just have a follow-up question because it sounds a lot like this journey of self-discovery is often born out of obstacle and in opposition to something, trial by fire, necessity. How do you provide support to someone for that journey of self-actualization, self-discovery, without sort of overcompensating and becoming too supportive so that there's never the opposition to have the discovery that's needed?
Yeah. Again, another good question, and I think the way I try and answer that, or try and bring it out, is one of the things that I will talk about. Okay, maybe let me just raise it now and kind of bring it to the answer. So, I think one of the first things you as an individual need to be. Sorry, are you asking the question from a manager's perspective?
I'm actually asking from the perspective of trying to assist a young person.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So, great question and good segue into something else that I remembered I needed to talk about. I'm making it up for a second. Oh, really? Okay. I think the one thing, and I was mentioning in my notes, is you as an individual, be very clear around the things you want to be able to achieve. And I'm going to let that sink in for a second, because what you want to be able to achieve is very different from somebody else. And if you are unclear about what you, and I term this thing vision. So in any strategy that I try and set up, whether that be business or technology strategy, or I've taken over a new business unit, the number one thing that provides a level of calmness to an environment is when you've got a very crisp and clear vision. So if I translate that from a business and technology strategy into an individual's perspective, you as an individual are very clear around the things you want to be able to achieve. And so the thing that I will share with you, if you put a manager's hat on or trying to coach somebody else, is ask that question. So what is your why? What is your purpose? What are the things you want to be able to achieve? Where do you see yourself going? It's not about like where do you see yourself in 5 years, because that's not the question. It's can that person articulate for themselves? And it's not I ask you the question now and you give me the answer now. Go back and you think about it. You whiteboard, use whichever tools you want. But the reality for that person is take the time to map it out. And that's the one lesson I wanted to share with you all today as well, is as you're trying to progress in your career and you're becoming confident about the things that you want to be able to achieve, be very clear on what that is. Because you might want to very well take a technical leadership role, or you could be like me and want to take an executive leadership role, whatever that might be, right? You could want to be an architect or a lead developer, whatever. Also know what motivates you, because once you know what motivates you, it will start to create this clarity and vision for yourself. And so you can ask those kinds of probing questions and get the mentee to share that with you or discover that with you, because that will help to kind of forge this path. And so hopefully it's kind of answering some of the questions we're getting.
Yeah.
If it's not, please feel free to debate. I'm very happy to.
I guess it's just that there's a tendency as somebody who wants to guide someone on a path that is meaningful to them to perhaps overcompensate. So I suppose thinking too much about your own why and supplanting that, and not perhaps providing air or space, or when there isn't an answer, not expecting there to be one, and leaving it in the ball in the court of the person that you're coaching or mentoring. That can sometimes feel uncomfortable. I'm wondering if that's just okay to sit with that discomfort.
It is absolutely okay, and I think that's exactly. And I think if you're providing the mentorship, be comfortable with the uncomfortable silence. So you're not expecting an answer right now, and that's often how I've approached needing to be a mentor to others. I mean, the organizations I've run have been 300 people big. You get lots of conversations. I mean, I had a guy who used to work with me, wanted to sell perfumes and wanted to be a test analyst and wanted to do a whole host of things, right? And he was actually also I don't want to get the term wrong, but a lay preacher, that's it. A layman in the church, yeah. So like, he had a whole host of things going on and a whole host of things that he wanted to do, and I said, okay, that's cool. You can be all of those things. But from your career perspective, like, what is it that you want to be able to achieve? In your personal life, what are the things you want to be able to achieve? Spend the time, a couple of weeks, come back to me and check in again, and figure out for yourself where it is. And then once you've got the clarity, then, because often what happens is, sometimes people, it's a knee-jerk reaction. So he was selling perfumes because he came from an underprivileged background, he was trying to make more money on the side. And I had to distill that for him. I said, okay, cool. So like, I get why you're trying to do this. But also don't let it take too much focus away, because you can't excel in other aspects of it. Something's got to give somewhere. So be aware of, you've got a lot of things on your plate, try and manage them accordingly so that you can pay attention to the things that are super critical and important. Because if you find that selling perfumes versus being a test analyst is more important thing, go ahead and be the best perfume salesman you possibly can be. But that's the point you must try and kind of bring out with the mentorship. Because it doesn't, I mean, once you start getting into this mentorship space for in the technology environment, some people are just in tech because it's a buzz, right? They don't really want to be here, or they don't really, it resonates with them for now, but they don't know if it's really where they want to be. And so if you want to be a perfume salesperson, like, go ahead and be the best, as long as you are the best at it, as opposed to being, excuse my language, half-assed at like whatever other job you do because it pays the bills. There was another hand up at the back.
Oh, sorry, you just answered the question now. Thank you.
Okay, let me go back to my notes and just see what else it was. I think I've touched on this piece that your talent will only get you so far. And so when you're going through this phase of being able to map out what you want your career to be and what you want it to look like over time, be disciplined in your approach, because it's far more reaching to achieve success for yourself again, as opposed to just relying on what you talent. And I think that it's important to learn that and to understand it for yourself, because often we think that I'm a really talented developer, I'm a really talented analyst, I'm a really talented project manager, and we tend to just put all our eggs in that basket, and we think that that's the recipe to success. As you progress, and I'll get to it in the next slide, you will start to see that there's a lot more required in the working world than just being really good at this talent or skill that you have. Like if you're a test analyst, like you need to progress in other ways, and so there are things around, like we touched on it earlier, what your personality is about, how you tend to lead and be a leader. All of those things count. How you engage people, how you communicate with them, all of those things count for your ability to be able to progress over time. And so, be aware of everything else that's around you, but don't try and leap too far. Right? If you're here today, that's what this is about. If you're here today, focus on the next step you're trying to take, and be sure that you're firmly planted on the next step while you're trying to aim for the top step, whatever that might be. So we get through some more notes and just see. Okay, one that I want to focus on. So it's one of my favorites. So actually, before I do that, let me just kind of interlink. Actually, all three of these. Let's talk about failure for a minute. So in your career, hand on heart, head on the block, you're guaranteed to experience failure. I've experienced it. I've been, the word is, asked to leave. I used to work for a very small software company. So a little anecdotal story. So when I was in Cape Town, I worked for, I forget what their name is, but they were small. They were also based here in town. In fact, their offices were just in the studio. So when we walked in, when we came up these steps to the left, they were just through the glass doors. And when they hired me, they said to me, we're looking for a really good analyst. I was like, okay, cool. That's something that I can do. It's something that I want to be able to do. And I nicely got asked to leave. And so that was kind of the end of that very short stint, but a failure nonetheless. And I'm proud of the thing, right? Like, it helped me to learn a whole host of things, more about myself and more about like what I've got to be very clear on I want and what I don't want. And again, this, like when I come into a conversation, whether I'm interviewing today for a role at Microsoft or the JSE or wherever that might be, I'm very clear and upfront about the things that I'm comfortable, confident, and happy to do versus the things that I don't want to be doing. And when I talk about the things that I don't want to be doing, it's at this stage now in my career, it's very strategic. So like, I don't want to be fixing projectors in a conference room. Right? So if any of the ball is coming. And you almost have to be that deliberate about it, because sometimes people think a CIO is a CIO is a CIO. Like there are different grades of CIO, there are different things that occupy a mind of a CIO. And so it's a little bit of like just being clear around you want to be strategic in your role, and so make sure that you're doing strategic things. In your career pursuit that you will go through, just be clear about the things that you want to be able to achieve. It will tie back to your why. So when you are clear around what it is that you want to be able to do, it will come out in the way that you engage, in the way that you speak, and in the way that you engage the interviewer around the things that make you tick, make you happy, make you excited versus the things that don't. And the more you share that level of excitement and energy around the things that really make you tick, the more it will resonate hopefully with the person that is interviewing. And so that's why I talk about this helping to be very clear around the things that you want to achieve. Anyways, so failure was something that I achieved. And then soon thereafter, I hit another speed bump in my career, which I'll kind of mark down as another failure. And at that point, I mean, I'm 23 years old, I think. Yeah, thereabouts, right? And I'm in Cape Town trying to figure out, like, what the heck do I do now? Because I'm really passionate about technology. I really want to work in this environment. I really want to work in financial services. What do I do? And rather than kind of sitting on my hands and going, oh, woe is me, and like this is such a big stuff up, and what do I do? And like I had nowhere to turn. I just kind of put a positive cap on and spin on things and went out there trying to make it again for myself. The long and short of that is that if I look at my overall career, it very much looks like this. It's probably like maybe there are a couple more red crosses in there than there are green ticks. But the reality is that you're going to fail, and you want to be fast. Cliche in the tech industry, you want to fail faster than fast. But more importantly, from a career perspective, and in this context, you want to learn from your failures. And if you're learning from your failures, like that's the number one thing that's going to help you progress and succeed, so that you don't repeat a mistake if it is deemed as a mistake. You don't repeat that same error again. Or if you repeat it in a slightly different manner, in that you've been able to figure out, okay, well, I've navigated past the first two steps of doing something wrong. The third one, this is where I can clearly see I went wrong and what I did and how I should rectify. And so just be aware. I'm sharing it as a don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid for it to look like this. Don't be afraid for it to look like this, because the reality is when you zoom out, the picture is going to look a lot more like this than it is going to.
Yeah, so you spoke about being focused and knowing exactly what it is, specifically what you want to do, right? And talking to different people, trying to navigate my way through this digital age that we're going through, and figure out what it is I need to do to prepare myself for the future. The constant thing that I've seen to come across recently is that I should be able to I should be able to develop software to be able to code. And I'd love to know what you are, because I'm more of a social person. I'm studying organizational psychology, and I sort of want to work in media. But then there comes a point where people keep telling me that some of the ideas even that I have, I get limited sometimes by the fact that I don't know how to develop. So I'd love to know what your perspective is on that, especially keeping in mind that you said you should be focused on specifically the thing that you want to do.
So it's a very good question, and I'm glad that Benny's actually sitting here, because I'm pretty sure that he is involved in the development space of those people. So the way I would answer the question, or the way I would look at it, is I am not the master of a whole host of skills. I'm very good in one particular domain, and I've defined what that domain looks like for me. Will I attempt to write a line of code now? Absolutely not. Like, if you even ask me what React.js is, or what Knockout.js is, I don't know. Like, I rely on an architect to tell me whether that's a good idea or not. And, I will openly say that I don't know those things. But if I was to partner with a guy like Benny, hey man, here's my idea. This is the thing I want to be able to do. If you can articulate your why in that instance, and be very clear around what your vision is, be prepared to partner with people, whether they're in your workspace, as in this is your day-to-day job, or outside of that, and say, hey man, let's try and connect on something. And the other thing, which I'll bring out at some point here, is, which I'll resonate with you, or hopefully will resonate with you now, is be authentic. So the thing that I've always said, I don't have a massive trust fund, I don't have a whole host of money just sitting there that I can go pick off a tree. And so I've been very honest with people. and I've said to them, hey, look, I don't have any money. I've got an idea, and I've got some things that I want to be able to do. You're never going to know whether that person is going to be entirely honest or share the same ethos or values as you do. But if you are upfront and honest with them, it gives them an understanding of where you're coming from and whether they want to be able to partner with you on those kinds of things. So the lesson I'm trying to share is you won't have all the skills. And the thing about development, and I'm going off a slight track, but I'm going to try and stay with your question and just keep you honest. The thing about development is it teaches you problem solving. It's problem solving skills, right? Yes, it's great to be able to write code, but it's not the be all and end all. If you're not, you don't churn out developers, it takes all sorts to make the world go round. So an organizational psychologist can work with the developer to release a product. It requires both of them. The developer is really good at the skill, but maybe might not have the idea in your view. And so you must just be aware of the fact that you don't need to be everything to everyone. And again, that's kind of general career thinking in line with the talk today. You don't need to be everything to everyone. Know who and how to partner with people to achieve whatever success it is that you want to be able to achieve. And as you're going through that, you're going to fail. Bringing it back to this case. And as you fail, learn from that failure. In the technology world, there's a book by Eric Rice. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name incorrectly. It's called The Lean Startup. So for you that's got an idea, it's actually a really good book to read. I'll share these as I kind of go along. I've shared 2 books. Start with Why, Simon Sinek, and Eric Rice, The Lean Startup. If you haven't read them, go out and read them, they're really good. But he talks about the concept there, which I use in my daily life, called build, measure, learn. Right? And so you can apply it to life, and you can apply it to living software. Build something. Before you build it, know how you're going to measure it and what measurements you want to put in place. And once you've had a chance to build and you've been able to measure, learn from what that measurement tells you and restart the process again. Because that's how you're iterating through something and getting out at whatever the end product might be. And so when you apply that to your life and as a life skill, you're going through life constantly learning. And it's called the feedback loop. Understand and see that failure is not, it doesn't define you, it's not the be all and end all. For any of you that operate in hardcore tech spaces or in environments where tech is everything, you will know that dropping a production database is a very bad idea. So I worked in a private bank, and there was a DBA who, for goodness knows what reason, decided to drop the production database. His command was drop the database. So we rock up the next morning, come into work, and we're like, cool, let's get started, and there are red flags kind of everywhere. He's a DBA, and so he needed access, well, he had access to production because hopefully not everybody has access to production. He had access to production and he needed to for the job that he needed. But for some reason, I don't know, he didn't drop the table, he dropped the database. So, big issue, right? And slice and dice it how you want, it's a disciplinary hearing. And I won't go into the specifics of it, but the long story short is today, that dude is the head of analytics for transactional banking within the bank. So he didn't allow that to define him. Yeah, he felt really shitty about it. Again, and as anyone would. So, and everybody came down on him, and then realized, okay, he made a genuine mistake, gave him the space. But that didn't go so far to the point where he had written off his career, or he said, okay, well, I'm not coming back to this bank again, or whatever. And you can imagine, right? Dropping a database in a bank is a really big deal. But he didn't allow that to define himself. And I think if he looks back at his career as now the head of analytics in transactional banking, it probably looks something like this. And so the reason I'm sharing the anecdote with you or story with you is because something that serious can happen, and he was able to recover from it and is doing something very different and meaningful in the bank today. Okay, so I spoke about kind of being relentless about your pursuit in your career, understanding your why, plotting your trajectory, being clear about your objectives and your vision. One thing I just want to touch on here is setting yourself goals and trying to achieve them. So I don't know how your companies or your environments work, but something that is common through every environment is around performance management and performance processes. So it would be remiss of me not to mention things around kind of how you manage this as an individual contributor today or as a manager today in your work environments and managing your career going forward. I think, again, the only thing that I can share with you is be very clear in these performance discussions with your manager around what is achievable, what you want to be able to achieve, and what your KPIs or targets are. The clear, because it's not a mystery, right? There is in no world do you live in where your performance discussion is a mystery. And if it is today, kind of chat amongst yourself in the networking discussion and see how you can kind of leverage other people's techniques for managing this kind of conversation, because it really shouldn't be a mystery. I've worked in environments where it is a mystery, like if the goalpost changes the minute I get into the performance discussion, then suddenly like you're not getting promoted and you're like, but you said these are the things I needed to hit and I did, why am I not being promoted? So you want to make sure that you are absolutely clear around what these KPIs are and use credible examples in the work environment that you have today, so that when you get into that performance discussion, and I don't know if you do it this way, but your body of evidence, right? For the last 6 months, I've done all of these things and I'm bringing that to the table, and this is what our discussion is about. It's not about like, oh, well, you didn't clean up your coffee cup and the thing, and like you were rude to Sandy and whatever else, right? Like, it must be very, obviously if you're rude and it's resulted in a disciplinary process, that's a very different story, so it might affect your performance. But nevertheless, you want to make sure that the discussion doesn't go all over the show. You are in full control of what the discussion is about. You are very clear on what your KPIs were and what you hit for the last 6 months and what they are for the next 6 months, or however, whatever the frequency is that you guys operate on, and what you're going to do to achieve. And then also make sure that then you're getting into one-on-one discussions with your line manager, right? Whether that be on a monthly basis or on a bi-weekly basis, depending on the size of your team, size of the organization, you'll know what's going to be best. Around being clear that these are the things you're trying to hit, and if you don't have access to it, how you get access to it. Because again, progress is determined, unfortunately, by the person that grades your performance in an organization. So for the time being that you're there, make sure that you are hitting as many of the targets that you want to be able to hit. Yes, there are going to be organizational targets that are going to be overlaid across that, but be very clear around, well, how do I have the ability to impact and influence those? Because if I'm just a test analyst or developer or analyst sitting here, like, how am I moving the share price? If that's the KPI, right? Like, it's a little bit unreasonable. So I'm using that as an example, just be aware of those kinds of things so that you don't get caught in this trap. Oh, well, our share price tanked, and so sorry, that means you're a 2 rating. If you're on a rate of 1 to 5, and 5 being best and 1 being worst. Okay. Any questions around that? Because I'm going to move on to the last one. Actually, one last point before I get to the next slide. Any other questions? Last one is around seeking out a mentor. So we touched on it a little bit here, and it's not necessarily any other things. So one of the things I really want to share with you, which has been a very big help to me in my career, is I've always sought out a mentor. I've got a couple, and they are aligned to very different things. Some of them are CEOs of businesses, some of them were CEOs, some of them are CIOs. So I'm looking for a very full spectrum and a very different view across multiple worlds, and so that's why I engage multiple people, and I take the good out of each one of those, and I kind of stitch that together for myself, and I kind of get my path forward. Yours in your environment could be very different, but whatever it might be, seek out a mentor. And when you do, make sure that person is not somebody that will feel threatened by your success or progress. They're kind of outside of the sphere of control around how your world operates in this. It could be somebody like your manager, depending on the relationship that you've got with them. But you try and get that advice from people they've got no stake in what that means to you from a compensation perspective or from a rating perspective. It's really just unbiased, objective advice around how you can grow in your career. So seek mentors out, engage with them on a fairly regular basis. It could probably be quarterly, and try and gain the best out of what they can give and share. Question with that?
How exactly do you find your mentors? And like, when it comes to finding mentors, I know that people say that you should pay mentors. I'd just like a bit more insight into how exactly it works.
So I'll share with you how I go about it. It could be very different for you. I don't think there's a single answer that will be perfect or how you can go and seek out a mentor. But I think the thing I look out for things like, where are my gaps, right? So I spoke about just self-actualization, self-awareness. And so I consider myself to be extremely self-aware, and so I know what some of my gaps are. And then I try and find people that can fill those gaps for me or give me advice around how to fill those gaps. And so that's really the long and short of it, is it's where I'm lacking a particular skill, or they are super skilled across multiple areas that I can get and gain advice from. And typically, people who are a lot more seasoned than you are, have been through a lot more than you have. If you think about where you are in your career today, whether you're in year 15 or year 5, you typically will mentor somebody who's in year 1 of their career, right? And that's because you've had the experience of the last 5 to 15 years around the do's and don'ts and how to progress and things to say and things not to say. Writing that email out in anger and then not hitting send, like it's all of that kind of coaching stuff that you'll give to somebody. And so I tend to look for people that are really strong business leaders, because my career is moving in a very different world. I'm not necessarily looking for any specific tech skills, and so I don't necessarily have a strong tech mentor. But if I was very interested in architecture and development, like I know exactly, like Andre is my man. Like he's a guy, he used to be my architect, and a guy that I respect hugely. He's a lot older than I am. If I ever wanted to know any technical advice, like he's the guy that I would pick up the phone and call. And so it depends on what you're wanting out of your career and what you want out of your life also, because your work is a massive part of your life, right? Like the things that you want to be able to get out of your life, and try and resonate with those people and get advice from them on how to do this. Cool.
I think we're hitting that time.
Can I do one more slide? Can you guys okay with one slide? Yeah. Can you hold the question?
Yeah.
You mind?
One slide.
One slide. Cool. Because this is actually it kind of closes up the whole thing. So I spoke about this Enneagram piece at the start. So I'm an 8, which is kind of here and here. And so when you are looking for a coach or looking for a mentor, not looking for a mentor, when you become more seasoned in your career and you start to progress up the manager track, look out for somebody that is able to provide you with some kind of life and business coaching skills. This is one way that people do it. This is called the Enneagram. There are a whole host of ways that do it. This has helped me to understand a whole host of things about myself, my personality, what my strengths are, what some of my weaknesses, and weakness is not necessarily the right word, are, but for the sake of the conversation and brevity of time, what some of my weaknesses are. And then how to work on some of those so that I can progress in my career. Continue to look out for these people. It's really helpful in your life. Last one is, when you get to progressing through your career, please give back. Because there's nothing better than a full circle that gets achieved by using the lessons in life that you've learned and then being able to pass that on to somebody else. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. My apologies for overrunning.
So there's a book, we'll try to get back to you, so thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey. I think there's a heck of a lot to take away from that. I think one of the first lessons, if you ever go through a leadership course, is people try to tell you to learn what the whole. And I think it's also one of those things as leaders, we really need to understand why we go into leadership. Because often it's quite a thankless task, so you really need to understand, well, I'm a developer, I can earn a really good salary doing this, but why would I have the pain of managing others and influencing other people? So we really appreciate this conversation. Thank you. I think it's very helpful for a lot of people.
I'm gonna be here hang on, so if you guys want to chat or ask more questions, please feel free.